The cold pre-dawn air over the Hindu Kush mountains was a living thing, a predator that gnawed at exposed skin and bit deep into the lungs. For the 8 men of SEAL Team 7, it was just another Tuesday. They moved as a single, silent organism, a ghost sliding through the jagged, moonlit terrain. Their objective was a small, isolated village, a pinprick on a map where intelligence suggested a high-value target was meeting with local cell leaders. It was a standard direct action mission. Slip in, confirm the target, grab him or terminate him, and extract before the sun fully cleared the eastern peaks. Leading the element was Senior Chief Liam "Coop" Cooper, a man whose face was a roadmap of deployments and whose eyes held the cold, calculating calm of an apex predator. Behind him, flowing in a single-file line, were his brothers, Jonesy, the burly communications expert, Truck Sullivan, their hulking heavy gunner, Miller, the point man with senses sharper than a coyote's, and finally, Doc Reynolds, their corpsman, the team's lifeline and moral compass. Doc carried more than just medical gear. He carried the unspoken weight of his brothers' lives in his kit. They infiltrated silently, the only sound the soft crunch of their boots on the frosted scrub. The village was a cluster of mud brick huts huddled in a shallow valley. They set up their overwatch position, to a rocky outcrop that gave them a clear view of the compound. Through their night vision goggles, the world was a surreal landscape of ghostly green. They waited, patient as stone, watching the target hut. Hours passed. The first hint of gray bled into the eastern sky. Then, a flicker of movement. A figure, slight and cloaked, emerged not from the target hut, but from a smaller, more dilapidated dwelling on the village's edge. The figure moved with a purpose that seemed out of place, and not the shuffling gait of a sleepy villager, but the fluid, alert motion of someone who knew they were being watched. Before Coop could whisper a warning into his headset, chaos erupted. It wasn't from the target hut. It was from the slopes opposite them. The sharp, distinctive crack of an AK-47 shattered the mountain silence, followed by a chorus of automatic fire. Ambush. They were the ones being hunted. "Contact rear! Get down!" Coop's voice was a low, guttural command in everyone's ear, and the world dissolved into a cacophony of noise and fury. Tracer rounds burned angry red lines through the dawn twilight. Truck's heavy machine gun roared to life, a deep, thrumming bass to the higher-pitched chatter of enemy rifles. The SEALs reacted with the terrifying speed of long practice, returning fire, seeking cover, their bodies moving as one. In the chaos, Coop saw the slight figure from the village again. She was no longer on the edge. She was running, directly towards their position. But she wasn't running with fear. She was running low, using every piece of scrub and rock for cover, her movements precise, tactical. She was a ghost herself, weaving through the kill zone. "We've got a civilian incoming," Jonesy yelled over the comms. "Negative," Miller's voice cut in, calm amidst the storm. "She's not a civilian. She's moving like us." Before anyone could process this, a plume of dirt and rock erupted 2 feet from Coop's position, a rocket-propelled grenade. The concussion slammed into him, throwing him back against a boulder. A searing, white-hot pain exploded in his leg. He looked down. His lower leg was a mess of blood, shredded camouflage, and bone. He tried to push himself up to issue orders, but the world swam. The fire was intensifying. They were pinned, outflanked. "Coop's hit!" Truck's voice boomed. Doc Reynolds was already moving, his medical bag thumping against his side. "Cover me! I need to get to him!" But the volume of fire was too heavy. It was a curtain of lead, impossible to penetrate. Doc slid back behind his rock, his face a mask of desperate fury. He could see Coop slumped and unmoving. He could see his brother dying, and he couldn't get to him. Then, a new figure entered his peripheral vision. It was the woman. She had closed the distance and was now crouched behind a low stone wall no more than 20 yards from Coop. She looked at Doc, And in that fleeting glance, something passed between them. It wasn't a question. It was an acknowledgement, a shared understanding of the situation. Doc saw her reach into the folds of her worn, dark clothing. For a heart-stopping second, his hand tightened on his sidearm. But what she pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a small, olive-drab pouch, a military-issue individual first aid kit, or IFAK, the kind every U.S. soldier carries. She looked at Coop, then back at Doc. But the air crackled with enemy fire. She took a deep breath, and then she moved. She didn't run upright. She stayed low, almost crawling, using the meager cover of the terrain. A bullet smacked into the dirt inches from her head. She didn't flinch. She just kept moving, a relentless, silent advance. The SEALs, watching through their scopes, were momentarily stunned. The woman reached Coop's side. She was now fully exposed. She rolled him slightly, her hands moving with a speed and certainty that was startling. She ripped open his pant leg, revealing the horrific wound. A piece of shrapnel had torn through his calf, severing an artery. Blood pulsed out in a rhythmic, terrifying spurt. Doc watched, transfixed. The woman's face was a study in concentration. She didn't look like a frightened villager. She looked like a surgeon in a combat hospital. Her hands flew to the wound. She didn't fumble. She didn't hesitate. With her bare hands, and she probed the wound, found the source of the bleeding, and then did something that made Doc's breath catch in his throat. She reached into her own pouch, pulled out a packet of Quick Clot, and packed it directly into the wound. Then, with practiced ease, she applied a tourniquet high on his thigh, cinching it down with a speed and force that would have been impossible for a novice. She had just performed a perfect, life-saving intervention, a procedure that required months of military medical training. The enemy fire began to slacken as the SEALs, spurred on by the sight of this woman risking her life for their leader, poured a devastating volume of suppressing fire onto the ridgeline. Seeing their window, Truck and Jonesy laid down a base of fire while Doc and Miller broke cover. They slid into the dirt next to Coop and the woman. Up close, Doc could see her clearly for the first time. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that held no fear. Her hands were covered in Coop's blood. Doc immediately took over, checking her work. It was flawless. The tourniquet was perfect. The bleeding was stopped. Coop was pale, but alive. He looked up at the woman. Who are you?" he breathed. She didn't answer. Her eyes darted to the ridgeline, then back to the village. She pointed urgently towards a dry riverbed that led away from the ambush site, a route of escape only she seemed to know. Her meaning was clear. Go. Now. "We need to move," Miller yelled, grabbing Coop under one arm. Truck hoisted Coop's other side. The team began their fighting retreat, laying down a continuous barrage of fire as they pulled back. The woman moved with them, not running away, but alongside, her head on a swivel, her movements as tactically sound as any of theirs. She guided them towards the riverbed, pointing out the safest path, warning them with hand signals of potential enemy positions they couldn't see. They moved for what felt like an eternity, the sounds of pursuit eventually fading behind them. Finally, they reached their emergency extraction point, a small, flat clearing where a helicopter could touch down. While Jonesy called in the picked-up signal, Doc knelt beside Coop, reassessing his vitals. He was stable. The woman's actions had saved his life. As the thumping of rotors began to echo in the distance, the tension finally began to ebb from the team's shoulders. They looked at the woman, this strange, silent savior who had appeared from the chaos. Truck offered her his canteen. She took it, drank deeply, and handed it back without a word. Coop, weak but conscious, reached out a shaky hand and touched her arm. "Thank you," he said, his voice a raw whisper. "You saved my life. I owe you everything." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. And her gaze swept across the faces of the other SEALs, men who had seen the worst of humanity, men who trusted no one. In their eyes she saw not suspicion, but a profound, silent gratitude. The helicopter crested the ridge, a dark, powerful shape in the growing light. As it flared to land, kicking up a storm of dust and debris, Doc moved closer to her. He pointed to the helicopter. "You're coming with us. We're not leaving you here." For the first time, a flicker of something. Was it fear? Uncertainty? Crossed her face. She shook her head, a quick, sharp movement. She pointed to the village, then to herself. Her home was there. Her life was there. This was her world. The chopper touched down. The door gunner waved them frantically. "Let's go! Let's go! We've got bogies inbound!" Truck and Miller half-carried, half-dragged Coop towards the aircraft. Doc grabbed the woman's arm. "You have to come. They'll know. The men who ambushed us, they saw you help us. You can't stay here." "It's a death sentence." He saw the truth of his words hit her. Her eyes widened slightly. She looked back towards the village, now a distant smudge in the valley. It wasn't just a location, it was everything she knew. But the alternative was unthinkable. With a final, tortured glance, she turned and let Doc pull her towards the helicopter. They scrambled aboard. The moment the last foot was inside, the bird lifted off, banking sharply away from the mountains. Inside the noisy, vibrating cabin, the team collapsed into their seats. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. The woman sat huddled near the door, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes fixed on the floor. She was a world away from them, lost in a place they couldn't follow. Doc Reynolds sat across from her, studying her. He cataloged every detail, the way she held herself, the specific way she'd moved, the calluses on her hands. Yet those weren't the hands of a farmer or a weaver. They were the hands of someone who had held a weapon for a very long time. The medical training was too precise, too military. Her reactions under fire were too instinctive. He looked at her and saw a ghost. She was a woman without a name, without a country, without a voice. But she moved like a soldier. She fought like a SEAL. And she had the hands of a healer. Who was she? An American soldier captured and escaped? A foreign operative? Now compromised? An angel? Dropped from the sky? Coop, sedated and stable, was lifted onto a stretcher. As they carried him off the helicopter at the Bagram airfield, he opened his eyes and looked for her. He found her, a small, solitary figure still sitting in the helicopter, looking utterly lost amidst the organized chaos of a military base. He held her gaze for a long moment, then gave her a weak but unmistakable thumbs up. A silent promise. He would find out who she was. And he would find a way to thank her. She didn't return the gesture. She just watched him go, her face a mask of stone. But in her eyes, for just a fleeting second, there was a crack in the facade. A flicker of something human. Relief, perhaps. Or the terrifying realization that her old life was now over, and a new, unknown one was just beginning. The silent woman with the hands of a healer and the heart of a warrior had landed in their world, and nothing would ever be the same for any of them. And the mystery of who she was and how she came to be a ghost on that mountain was a story that was only just beginning.